Hey guys, hold on one second. I have my other computer up. Oh well. What a great start, right? Ay, ay, ay. Okay. Trying to turn it off. I haven't been doing this for a while, so. There we go. Wow, what a professional. Anyway, guys, welcome back. It's been a while. Kind of give you an update on just, life's been busy. But yeah, that was a great intro, right? Great intro. Well, yeah. So give you a quick little update. Life just got busy last year. A lot of things worked mostly. And I had overcommitted to a lot of things. I get excited about stuff that I do. So 2024 is about not overcommitting. So that's one of the reasons why I waited for a bit before I put this podcast back on. But I'm going to give you an update on where we are with the jam. And we're going to talk a little bit about some design ideas, philosophies. Tonight, it's going to be about scouting and how we can implement scouting into the game. And then I'm going to jump in and do some design on my Drachen game, which is my entry into the Postcards from the Front Jam 2024. Let me just real quick look at some of the comments. Early on, Charles. Hey, Charles, how you doing, my friend? Buenas tardes. Ptolemachus is joining us. Hi, Ptolemachus. I'm currently in an argument with his inner monologue. So far, he's winning. And as I responded, or as not Jay would call it, headcanon. Which, yeah, he doesn't care for so much, right? Yeah, live without the L. That's kind of how we started. And here is a name I don't recognize. Jay Dalton, 3UA. Hi, Jay. I'm assuming it could be James. Maybe not. John, Joe, or just Jay. Or not Jay. Oh, thank you, sir. Yeah, we're going to start highlighting some of those this year. And also in other episodes, I'm going to be highlighting the entries for this year's. We actually have one. I found it today. So that's kind of cool. I haven't had a chance to look at it. It was posted 3 days ago. And we'll dive into that probably next week or the following week. So schedule-wise, guys, what I'm looking at doing, John. Hi, John. So what I'm looking at doing, guys, is once a week between now and the end of the jam, be focusing on some of the entries and talking about those, and also the progress on my design for the game that I'm working on. And then after that, I'll start bringing some of the games from the previous year, unless there's some weeks where there are gaps, and I'll bring in some of last year's games and talk about, because there's still a lot that I haven't had a chance to even play yet. We have like 40 some games. And so, excuse me. So we'll do that. And then also I'm going to use this platform or this show to force myself into getting some of my other designs finished, basically. I've got millions of designs, but I've got a number that I can bring on here, talk about design, maybe get some feedback from you guys. I want this to be really focused on game design and obviously highlight some of the stuff on Postcards from the Front, but I don't want to limit it to just what we're doing on Postcards from the Front. So if you guys got questions about your design, or if you've got a design you want to talk about, let me know. We'll definitely bring it up. We could brainstorm all sorts of things. I want this to be a community where we're designing games. And that's ultimately why I started my channel almost 2.5 years ago now. And if you look at some of my first videos, which are horrible, but they are about game design. So that's always going to be a thread through my channel and what we do here. So with that in mind, I'm going to let me bring up a screen. Let's just talk about the jam real quick. Let me find it. And there we go. So what we got? Okay, so we've got 1 month and 12 days, 5 hours and 54 minutes to go. Like last year, I extended the deadline by a month. Some of the same stuff as last year. Now, we don't have a free makeover. Last year, Niels Johansson did that. It was fabulous. But we can't expect people to donate time like that every year. But his work is just amazing. And we'll look at that game and that design at some point during the show. And like I said, we've got one entry. I'll just pop it up here real quick. And this is by Battle Ready Games. Desmond Doss, the hero of Hacksaw Ridge. Again, it's a solo game. I haven't downloaded it yet. I just saw it today. So Richard is already on it. Way to go. Alrighty. So again, we've got, let me take it back. Oh, sorry. No, I lost my page. There we go. Back to the overview. So we got a month and 12 days. So if you haven't got a game that you've designed yet, feel free. You still have time. Jump in. And we've also expanded this year's kind of requirements. I hate using the term requirements, guidelines. So obviously you can do the postcard size, which is 5 by 7, or a full page, 8.5 by 11, or if you're across the pond, an A4. Calling it kind of a Christmas card from the front, a little bit larger. Sometimes your designs just can't quite fit on that 5 by 7. You need a little extra room. So we've decided to have the 2 different formats. You can use either or. And obviously anything in between would fit on an 8.5 by 11. So, feel free to do that if that's what you're looking to do. Okay, let me just check. Again, pardon my roughness with the show tonight. It's been a while since I've been on and switching screens and moving around. Mr. Bastaman, good evening all. Hi, sir. How are you? Telemachus, I'm also time poor. Yeah. That's kind of why I want to use this this forum. And I'll try to do it on Friday nights or Saturday nights. We'll see how it plays out. Whatever's going to work best. I don't want to step on other people's shows and things like that. So I'm going to try to fit into the community in that regard. But this will at least give me some time. And I'm planning on anywhere from an hour to maybe 2 hours. I don't want it to be too long. But I do, if I get into doing some design and there's some flow, we'll just keep it going. Alrighty, so we talked about kind of a quick update of the jam. I highlighted the Desmond Doss, which is our, the first entry in this year's. And what I'll do during the week is I'll download it, read through it, and give you guys an update. It is a solo game. And let's go ahead. First of all, are there any questions in chat? If you guys have questions about what we're doing, throw them up. I'll get to them and answer whatever I can. But one of the things that I was on a panel for Armchair Dragoons had an online con, and I was a panel member talking about small games and game design. Hey, my friend, how are you? I'm glad you could join us tonight. Hopefully you've got a game in this year's jam as well. I haven't looked at everybody that's signed up. I've kind of I want it to be a bit of a surprise for me. So I haven't even looked at who the entrants are yet. So we'll see. Again, I want a little bit of a surprise myself. So anyway, I was doing this panel and we were talking about small-sided game design. And, oh, there we go. Awesome. I'm looking forward to it, boss. Looking forward to it. And Brent had brought up, we were just talking about games and such, and he had said that he didn't think that there were many games, or he knew of many games that handled scouting and recon. And that got me thinking about how you would do something like scouting and recon. So this will be our design discussion for this evening, is talking about scouting and recon. And I play a lot of video games, and one that I've fallen back into hook, line, and sinker, and I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's called EVE Online. I actually started playing that game like 20 years ago. My accounts are really old. But one of the things that, and when I play video games, I look at them from a designer's perspective. And looking at EVE Online, they've got a lot of, this is probably not the right term, but let's just call them mini games. You can mine, you can PvP, you can PvE. They've got, a bunch of different types of gameplay. And they will bring in, and so I call it a mini game, because as you're playing and you say, oh, I want to go mining for a bit, maybe you get bored of that. Well, you can go rat hunting, or, pirates, right? So you can jump around, and there's various ways you can do that. You can do exploring, where you go into wormholes and you search for things. Point being is, any one of those is a fun game, but they combine them all into this environment that when I log in, I'm trying to play everything, right? Or a lot of different things to see what I like, what I don't like. And it got me thinking about how mini games can be incorporated into larger scale war games. And I have seen some that will have, say, a strategic map and a tactical map. So you can plan maybe your ground movement, and then when you get into, say, resolving combat, you go to maybe a smaller, platoon size or man size combat scale. And so I thought that's probably a good approach to handling scouting and intelligence. Micah says, what about espionage and intelligence reports? That's not preset for games. Yeah, I mean, those would also fit in too, right? And so, because intelligence is really important. I'm listening to a book on tape for World War I, and it's really amazing how communications, or lack thereof, good communications, really caused a lot of chaos. And by chaos, I mean people being killed, casualties. From there's a point where I'm listening in the book now where they're talking about the British soldiers are going up this hill against the Turks. And the artillery didn't realize that they were in the middle of this offensive and started shelling the hill right on top of their own troops. And again, we're getting into intelligence and, real-time intelligence, what's going on the battlefield. And so thinking about how that can be implemented, I came up with the idea of doing Drachen, which is balloons. So World War I don't know how many of you guys know the basic premise of what they would do, but it's as it sounds. Guys would go up into a balloon with binoculars and cameras and survey the no man's land and the enemy movement, troop movements, and gun emplacements, artillery emplacements on the other side of the no man's land, the other side of the front. And there were pilots who specialized in balloon bursting. So when balloons were found, obviously you don't want the enemy knowing what you're doing. They'd send out aircraft to shoot them down. And that became kind of a specialized trait as opposed to just straight air-to-air combat. And apparently it was pretty deadly. You could get too close to a balloon when you shoot it and it explodes. That's one way you can kill yourself. Artillery, because you're attacking a fixed target. So if you think about it from the ground in your artillery, you kind of have an area you can pre-sight in, right? And so as these aircraft are attacking these balloons, you got to deal with artillery. Excuse me, artillery. Now, I would imagine that the balloons also, you got to be careful you don't shoot down your own balloons, which I would imagine happened on occasion. I mean, these guys aren't perfect, right? So, but that's a form of intelligence. And I know in the American Civil War there were some balloons, although not as prevalent as in World War One. And I've even read where in Napoleonic times they had balloons that they used for surveillance. And apparently, just all the equipment that was required to pull that off was such a burden that a lot of these armies, and I believe Napoleon just said, it's not for what we're learning. It's not worth the hassle to drag these balloons around with us as part of our army. It's just more people got to feed, more horses. That was the thing, right? So with that in mind, I started working on Drachen, and I thought it'd be perfect. Now, I'm not sure I can fit it on 5.5, 5x7, but I'm pretty sure I can fit it on one page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm working in an Excel file. I'm going to bring up the Excel file and let me find my screen. I'm going to stop sharing that screen. Let me get to the other one here. Give me a second, guys. Okay, bring up this window. There we go. Okay, so what we have here is the game is going to basically be kind of table driven, and it's a push your luck style of game. Okay, so the idea being that you're going to need to get in your balloon, go up as high as you can, and now the higher you go, the longer it takes you to get down, the more you're exposed to enemy aircraft that could come over and shoot you down. But also the higher you go, the more you can see and the better quality of information you can bring back to those to your side. And so there's still a few rough spots in the game, but the basic premise is it's going to be a number of days that you're going to be going up, gathering information. But I want it, again, because it's a push your luck game, I want there to be kind of a timer. And so I'm going to have a randomization of the ending of the game. And the ending of the game will be one of two things, where you either win or you lose based on your ability to gather enough information to thwart the enemy's planned offensive, which involves artillery fire and troops coming across no man's land. So you're only going to have so much time, and then you're going to get into a period of the game could end on this turn, and it might be 3 or 4 turns. You're unsure. And so you've got to get your information quickly, and I'm going to have it to where you have a points total, victory point total. Kind of makes sense to me, at least at this point, that you want to get, and then I'll come up with a list of how successful your victory or defeat was. Successful your defeat was. There you go. You know what I mean, the severity of it. So I'm starting out. I'm going to use a 6-sided dice as basically the only thing that you need. This is a solitaire game, although it can be a 2-player game, and I'll talk about where my brain is on that. But basically, you've got your Drachen. We're going to when I start, I just throw up some basic numbers, work with some guidelines, and then I adjust as the design goes on. So I just said 10 hit points. If your balloon takes 10 hit points, crash and burn. And obviously that would be a loss. You go to a mission. So the first thing is you're going to want to determine what your mission is. So I've got a bunch of frontline reconnaissance, and then I've called artillery spotting mission. That's where you are doing spotting for your artillery to do damage to the enemy. So this is the preferred mission. But starting the game out, you don't have the reconnaissance or the intelligence to know where to direct and spot for your own artillery. At least 5 out of 6, you don't. Now, if you happen to roll a 6, then apparently you've got some information already, and you can go into that type of mission. Now, I might come up with other missions, but right now I've just got the 2. So Then we're going to move over here. And this is a frontline reconnaissance encounter table. So once you get a mission, you have to roll to see if you have an encounter. That encounter would be, at this point, enemy aircraft trying to shoot you down. So height, which is here, I've got 3 abstracted altitude levels, a level of 1, 2, and 3. And then this would be the roll of the dice, 1 through 6, right here. So when you're at height 1, on a 6, you're going to get an encounter. And right over here is what I've got so far. You'd roll to see what type of damage you would take on that encounter. Okay. On a height of 2, you're a little higher up. 50-50 chance of an encounter. And when you're at maximum altitude, you're going to get an encounter of some sort. It's a question of how much damage you take and how long you want to stay up and gather information. Now, again, I'm going to abstract some of this. Obviously, if you're being attacked, you're not going to stay up in the air and keep gathering information, but I'm going to take a little leeway and put some gamification in it in that sense. We'll talk about the artillery here in a second. Now, when you get up to these heights, these are chances for, on this table, that you're going to gather intelligence. So at a height of 1, there's no chance. You're not high enough off the ground to gather any information, okay? You're high enough to get shot down and be a target, but you're not high enough to gather any information. So you're going to need to at least go up to a height of 2. And then you got a 50-50 shot of getting 1 roll on the results table for your, and let me scroll this over just a little bit. Okay. And then if you're at height 3, you're going to get a couple of chances where you get 1 roll, and then 33 1/3% chance that you're going to get 2 rolls on the intelligence that you're able to gather by staying up at that height. And again, these are just some real rough numbers that I put in. When you roll a 1 through 6, if you roll a 6, you're going to get a massive troop buildup, major offensive detected. I think I misspelled that anyway. And then also a 5 and a 6. Next mission is an artillery spotting mission. Now, I don't have the details for an artillery spotting mission, but the idea being is that you've identified the enemy, you've got some coordinates for them, and you can call in your own artillery to start to do damage to them, which would then give you additional victory points to thwart or at least affect the enemy's offense if it does trigger. Okay, so it's a very simple game. I'll show you what I'm doing down here with the map in just a second. So this is what I've got so far. So you're going to roll a mission. You're going to check for your encounter. Now, if there's an encounter before you take damage, at least at this point, artillery. Now, the lower you are to the ground, the more opportunity that artillery has to fire or get hits. Okay, and I'll come up with how many aircraft are attacking you, and I'll work on that. But basically, it's kind of the inverse. Yeah, you're only 1 off the ground, so going up, there's a 1 in 6 chance, but you got a lot of artillery that can come to bear and shoot down those enemy aircraft. Now, the higher you go, you see you only have 2. It's not going to be as effective. And then in the middle is the middle, right? And you see you got some 2s there. Now, I forgot what some of these numbers mean. I put this together a couple of weeks ago. So I apologize for that. Let me just check to see if there's anything in chat real quick, guys. I got my other computer up that was making all that noise at the beginning of the podcast. Yeah, okay. So far, nada. Any questions? Again, feel free, fire them off. Okay, so you select a mission, or you roll for a mission. And again, I might come up with others. You check for an encounter as you go up each height level, right? So you go to height 1. No. You go up to height 2. Now you can go to height 3. And again, I may add 4 heights to tweak this a little bit. And then the artillery. And then you'll take damage based on those aircraft coming in after you. I don't know why my bar does this. Now, I've thought about this to add a map layout down here. So this area right here in the middle, this is no man's land, okay? So let's say that I'm sitting in this location here. These three and this is what I can see on the enemy side. So besides no man's land, there's 2 rows for their front lines or just behind the front lines, and the same as us on our side. So I can push forward. Now I don't have any of these numbers factored into the design yet. And this could be a multiplayer game, this or 2-player game, right? Where we each have our balloons. We're trying to find out where the enemy is, and you can move things around. I've already got that kind of half design in my head, but I'm going to focus on the solo part first, and then we'll see about if I want to make it a 2-player game. But I can see there's a lot of options there. So in this map, you're going to be close to the front, which is a little more dangerous. And they did that in real life. It's like they tried to get closer, and there was a bit of a bravado about how close they could get, and bragging rights amongst some of the balloonists. From what I had read, they talk about, hey, get a little bit closer. And so you can see at least here, and then 1 square in the back row, right? And depending on where you are in the 5 columns, again, this is in a multiplayer game. So just by sitting here, I can only see these 4. There's a lot of spots I can't see. So in a 2-player game, you could have resources allocated here that are hidden, and depending on where the balloons are placed. Now, if you put yourself in the back row, you got 3 that are in no man's land, and you're only going to see 1 square in front of you. So it's not very effective. So you're going to want to push up. But if you've identified something here, maybe you pull up here an artillery spot. Again, my mind's kind of thinking a little bit on how I might do that. But for the solo game, it's going to be pretty straightforward. Again, roll on the mission table, determine an encounter, deal with the encounter with anti-aircraft fire, take any damage you might get, roll for your effectiveness and spotting. And that stupid bar, hold on. I hate when it does that. And then roll for the outcome of the information that you were able to identify. And then I'll come up with, again, victory points, a turn structure, and the in-game components of the randomness of how the game ends. And that's where I'm at right now, guys. So pretty straightforward stuff. Vigilance says, looks nice, straightforward, but fun. Hopefully it's fun. Again, it's going to be a push your luck type of game, right? Meant to be played in a matter of minutes. 15, 20 minutes tops is what I'm searching, searching for, what I'm targeting. So that's kind of the idea. So I am going to, for the next, we're about half an hour. So for the next 30 minutes, guys, I'm going to work on some thoughts or ideas. If you've got any suggestions, throw them up in the comments. Because what I want to be able to do is kind of get comfortable designing in a live environment. So this is kind of new for me. So I may fumble along in the beginning here. And again, I've forgotten what these numbers mean rolling on here. So what do I have for the outcomes? Let's take a quick look. Now, again, the victory points I just thrown up here are just placeholders because I haven't got kind of an in-game resolution figured out, like how many points to win at this point. And this is pretty boring. Normal troop deployments for 4 of them. And then these 2 are massive buildup. Sorry, I'm poking at my eye. I made popcorn tonight with cayenne pepper. Got some on my fingers, and then I touched my eye. Now I got cayenne pepper in my eye. Yeah, there's that. So let's spend a little time thinking about if we get an encounter. So on this encounter table, I've got a 1, 1, 1, 1. So one encounter. I think I'm going to change the 6 to 2 encounters. And this would be, I think, an encounter, number of aircraft that are coming after you. In fact, I'm going to make that a 2, and we'll put a 2 there. I don't know if I want to make that a 3. Maybe that'll be a 3 later. What the heck? Let's make it a 3 now, because that would be pretty nasty. If you're up at the height, you roll a 6, you got 3 enemy aircraft coming at you. Obviously, I had it to where they can destroy 3 if they're coming down at you below. So you have the option of, when you're being attacked, to winch yourself back down to the ground. And that would end that particular session or day. I may do it to where it's 2 sessions, 1 in the morning. You're doing recon. I'm assuming you go up for a while, and at some point you got to come down and eat, pee, and do whatever else that you might need to do, and then maybe go up in the afternoon. So you go up, that'll be a certain number of turns, and you come down. You gather however many points you gather. You go up again in the afternoon. Again, if you're forced to come down, that would end that particular session. I'm thinking you get at least 1 or 2 days before the randomness of when the in-game triggers. At least that's what I'm thinking at this point, guys. Oh, weather. You know what? That's a great idea. I had thought about that, but I hadn't put it down and completely forgot. Yeah, so you know what? Let's go back here, and I'm going to put a note here. Weather chart. And I will come up with, so now let's think about weather. 1, you can roll the weather before your mission, but what if the weather changes during the mission? So maybe that's an encounter, a change of weather, maybe? Let's see. I'll figure that out. Okay, I'm going to put a note here. Pre-mission and mid-mission, during mission. Because I'm sure that would come into play, right? High winds. So what kind of weather can we have? High winds? Rain? Thunder showers? Boy, be up at level 3 and get hit with thunder showers? Can you make it down? Cloud cover? Maybe it's not raining, but the cloud cover affects maybe like a -1 on your dice roll for your recon, things like that. Same thing with rain, depending on, heavy rain, light rain. Let me put rain, heavy, light. Light, heavy. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So what do we got with weather? We got pre-mission, during mission, high winds, rain, light, heavy rain, thunder showers, cloud cover. Okay. Oh. I'm trying to get back. There we go. There we go. Telemachus, is this solitary? Yes. Yeah, you know what? So I was mentioning earlier, Telemachus, can 2 people play head-to-head, both trying to intel while destroying the opponent? Yeah, actually, I think that's where this could go to. I think if I start off at least in the next month, get this designed for the game jam to be solo. It'll be a solo game, and then I can expand this to be multiplayer or two-player, where I'll have that abstract front, right? You get with the no man's land and either side of the trenches, and design it out. I think it could be a fun two-player game. And so then you as a player, you'd have more resources than just your balloons, right? You'd have your artillery. Maybe you have a certain amount of infantry. And depending on how much damage you can do with your artillery in a certain area of the front, and then you send, blow the whistle, send them over the top. And maybe even to the point of not knowing how much intelligence your opponent has. That could be interesting as well. So yeah, I could see this as being a pretty interesting short playing two-player World War I front lines type of combat game. Oh, there we go. Fog. Okay, you know what? Great idea. Great idea. Let me add that to my list. Fog. Not the same as cloud cover. Fog is low, cloud cover is high. The other thing you might be able to find is your opponent's balloons too. So I have artillery spotting. Again, that's for targeting and bringing the artillery to bear. But potentially things like finding your enemy's air base or air bases. And then again, the troop movements to maybe allow you to adjust on a two-player game or even a single-player game. I may throw in some resources where you have to set your defense up. You don't know which. So we look at the map here, right? If you can only see up front 3 areas, this could be where the attack's coming from. So if you don't find it in time and you haven't shifted your forces over or bombarded that area, you might end up taking the blunt of the bench, right? And in the sense of the game, lose the game. Yeah, see, now it's starting to come together a little bit for me here. Ptolemaica says snow. Yeah, I wonder how that. I'll have to do some research on the snow. I wonder how that affected combat during World War I. I honestly do not know. But obviously, if it's snowing, you're not going to be getting up in the air, or I wouldn't think that you would. Hey, Mike. I know Mike said he was working on a game, so I'm curious to see what Mike's working on. And then Charles says, can't stay, guys. Be safe. Thanks, Charles. I always appreciate it, my friend. I told him, Mike says, sabotage is another way to kill a balloon. Well, the balloons are behind the lines. Well, unless you push up close, right? Sabotage. Let me write that down. I'm not sure that fits with what my vision of the game is. Did I spell that right? Sabotage. I'm sure I spelled it wrong. Oh my God. Did I flip these 2 letters? See, A-G-E? I'm a horrible speller. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting one, Telemachus. One thing, now, on a 2-player game that's maybe a little bit longer to play, those are the types of things you can build in. In the postcards from the front, one of the things you got to keep in mind is you only have so much space to write your rules. And so you're almost forced to keep things tight. Now I do, 8.5 by 11 though is what I'm targeting this game to go on. I think I want to get the solitaire version of it done first. Now, one of the things I could do is I could change the dice from a 6-sider to, I wanted a 6-sider because everybody can find a 6-sided dice, right? Just kind of keep things simple. But I could go to an 8 or to a 10 to give me a few more options here. I'll think about that during the week, see what I can come up with. But this is good. I like throwing weather in here. So now I'm going to look at this encounter table, and that almost, like I can put a W here for weather. Well, now I'm going to pre-roll the weather. So I'll put a weather chart, maybe roll a mission, roll weather, either or, roll a weather first, then a mission. I'll think about that. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on that. Should you roll weather before mission, or you want to roll the mission, see what it is, see what the weather is, and then now you've got to decide, do you want to go up because you already know what it is. But also keep in mind there is going to be a time, an abstract timer. You can't just sit around and wait for the weather to completely clear. And certain weather might be all day weather or morning or afternoon. So right now I'm thinking each day is going to be separated into 2 sessions. A morning session, you take your balloon up, and then an evening session where you take or afternoon session where you take your balloon up. At least that's where my mind is right now. I'll see how long it takes to play. Now, I think because it's mostly table driven, you're going to have some decisions to be made. Like, and here's the trick with the push your luck, at least in my opinion. I want 3 to really be dangerous, but also to really give you a reward. If you're going to go to the highest altitude, right now it's 3. Again, I might take it to 4, depending on the granularity that I want in the encounters and such. But as it stands, the second tier, you need to be able to potentially win the game if all you want to do is play on the second tier. I don't want it to be a game where it's like you just go to the highest level and stay there. I want there to be some meaningful decisions to be made. I don't want there to be an always an obvious. You just go to height of 3 and you just roll the dice and see what happens. I want you to think about, hey, we're going to go up, we're going to go down. Maybe it's something you do intermittently. Maybe you sit at height 2, a certain number of turns per session. So if you were to go completely up from ground level to 1 to 2 to 3, that would be 3 turns. And then if you were attacked and you came straight back down, that would be 3 turns. So just going straight up and straight down is 6 turns, right? And so in the middle of that, maybe there's a total of 10 turns per session. So you can go up, you can go down. That gives you 4 turns to do things, to roll, to spot. And again, I'll have to set those victory points over here. Right now, I'm just very rough 1 through 7, and it's a dice roll. So the trick will be to put some player agency into the game. If you risk, really get a decent reward, but don't make that the default decision for the player. And that's why maybe a 4th level, but then that's 8 up, 4 up, 4 down, and only 2. I kind of like the 3. Again, it's abstracted, right? And if it doesn't take long, so what if it's 12 or 15 phases or turns per session? When I design games, one of the things I try to do is I try to figure out how long do I want the game to be, and then abstract how many turns that might be based on the mechanics. So that's what I'm kind of doing now, right? I'm talking about going from height 1 through 3. Straight up, straight down would be 6 and give you 4, and maybe 2. So you're up and down, up. Now you maybe have 8 as a session for a round or whatever I'm going to call that. Yeah, but that's going to help me set kind of the the game length. And once I get one turn down, then I can say, okay, that's one session for the morning, one in the afternoon. And let's say each one takes about 3 to 4 minutes to play. And morning and afternoon, that would be 2. So let's just call it 6 to 7 minutes to play a day. If I want to keep it at 20 minutes, it would be 3 days, right? And so that would give you 6 sessions to get up, get down, and then it's a question of maybe in the afternoon of day 2 and anytime during day 3, the game could end based on the random selection of how the game could end. Yeah, I like that. Dice roll modifiers. Yeah, exactly on the spotting table, what you're able to see. So what I have right now is, and this will probably change, but these numbers represent the amount of times you can roll on the results table, right? So if you're at the highest altitude, you roll a 5 or a 6, you're going to get 2 rolls on the recon results table. And I haven't done any work yet on the gameplay for the forward spotter roll with your own artillery against the enemy's artillery or their troop build up of troops, because a certain amount of being able to, you'd probably have to be at altitude 3, probably have to stay there for a while to be effective, like 2 to 3 turns is what I'm thinking, right? So you get up there, you got to stay up there, even if you're being attacked. If you come down, but that's going to affect the effectiveness of your artillery against either the troops or the enemy's artillery. So I will, by next week, I'll have a table with some of that information in it for let's call it artillery fire for the spotting mission. So weather, I like the dice roll modifier. I think that's probably the best way of handling that. Let's see, what other comments do we have here? Hard mode seasons, weather shift depending on time of year. Yeah, I need to do a little research to see what was actually done in the wintertime. I'm sure they fought. It's just a question of well, I'm just going to look. I'll just do the research. Nice. I've been jabbering away, so I'm not sure what the nice was in reference to. Sunny days, more chance of being shot down by an enemy air. Yeah, I think that kind of the risk, right? If you go up on a clear day, maybe you see a little further. So if we go look at the map that I have, this abstraction of a map, maybe even if you're up, maybe if you're back, maybe you see into, and maybe that pushes that forward. So on a clear day, you could stay further back, which is a little bit safer. But also what I want to do is I wanted to tie the height. So if you're in the front row, you've got 2 right now. So if you're closer to the front lines, no man's land, maybe the effect of height 2 is effectively the same as height 3 from the back. Okay. And then height 3 in the front maybe opens up even a larger area for you to see. So I'm going to play around with what you're able to see here. And I'm going to think, again, I got to be careful because I've only got a page, right? There's a lot I can come up with and say, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this. But when you get down to writing the rules and making it all fit, you got to cut stuff. But when I design, a lot of times I will purposely over-engineer or over-design with the idea that I know that I'm going to cut things. And what I found with that kind of design philosophy is almost every game I design, stuff gets cut. And so I'm not timid about it. If you design games and everything you think of gets into a game, then in my opinion, there's things that probably could be cut sometimes to make a game better. Sometimes less is more, right? And so it's hard when you come up with an idea and you want it in the game, or you want to do things, and sometimes those ideas will derail you into designing something that's not part of the game. And that was the trigger that I had, was sabotage. Sabotage might be an effect or something that happens, maybe an event that, and I've got to figure out how that sabotage might have worked historically with the balloons, because the more that I can put in the game that gives you the flavor of what these guys went through. Obviously it's not going to be exact. We're talking about a 20 to 30 minute game. But sometimes all you need is just a little suggestion of something, and your mind just fills in the rest, right? That's one of the keys of designing games, is sometimes just put the seeds there and let the players run with it. You don't have to connect all the dots. But also what I was getting at is I have to be careful of something like a sabotage, to say, oh, I don't want that to then become its own subsystem in my game that just chews up a bunch of stuff, and the game becomes about sabotaging balloons and not about recon of balloons. And so those are my brain triggered and said, okay, that's cool, but let me be careful with that one. Weather is obvious. That needs to, I think, needs to be in the game. Okay, so I'm going to build a weather table before next week. I'm going to think about how we do the damage with the aircraft, and start laying out the mini game subsystem within this small game for artillery spotting. I think I'm going to leave it with these 2 missions, because again, anything else might come into play, because I think what's going to happen is I'm going to get this game designed, I'm going to put it into the game jam, and it's going to allow this to then become the basis for a 2-player game. Because I thought of this today when I was looking at stuff, and I'm going, yeah, this could totally be a 2-player game. And again, with the push your luck side of things, you have a certain amount of resources that you're trying to trigger and get. 80-20, take the top best. Yeah, Telemachus. The 80-20 rule is something I try to do in all aspects of life, as a general guideline, right? I think that's a good idea on this, is throw in a bunch of stuff. And my point about cutting is I expect to cut something, so when I do, I don't fight to keep it in the game, right? I say, hey, I've got all these great ideas. I'm going to boil it down to what really is the focus of this game. So in my mind, the focus of this particular game is gathering the information to thwart an offense, or what may happen is your side goes on the offense. You get enough information, and maybe you pull the trigger, and you're able to push your side to victory. So that's going to be, again, that might be that next level that's not part of this particular game. That might be in the 2-player game. In the solo game, it's just thwart the enemy. And at this point, I'm thinking you're going to be the Germans. And weren't the Allies the Entente? I always get that backwards. So whether the French or British. So you're basically, again, the name, right? Drachen is German. And so you're a German ballooner that's trying to thwart the Entente's upcoming offense. And I think keeping it focused at that level, at least for the initial version of the game, is kind of what I'm going for. Central Powers versus the Entente, right? Thank you, Telemachus. I've been listening to a lot of stuff. Nagawa's got me totally into World War I. I've always been interested in it, but just his passion for it, and it just draws you in. There's so much. And like I said, I've got a book that's like 26 hours long, audiobook I've been listening to. I'm about 4 hours into it. And it's just amazing, this war. Not that this game is going to represent much of that, but I am learning that there's quite a bit of artillery fire that went on for hours that would come before an offensive. And so I want to try to capture some of that flavor with this game. And then I might think of turning this into a 2-player game, Western Front, Eastern Front. I want to probably Western Front. And again, you've got your reconnaissance that you use to help find, and that's the fog of war. Right now, we've taken the design idea of scouting as a mini game, designed it as a solo mini game that has a lot more ideas that we're coming up with here that can be implemented into the game, but hold some of those ideas until I do the 2-player game. And then the 2-player game, I'd take some of those restrictions off. If I can make it fit on an 8.5 by 11, great. Then it becomes a really, simple game to do. If it's a bit more, then maybe I look at how I could self-publish. There's a lot of things you can do depending on the complexity and the content that comes out of that. But that could be a fun little game where you're setting up and you've got your little artillery pieces, you got your aircraft, you got your troops. Dare I say, along the lines of Memoir 44 or Command and Colors? Isn't that the series of the system? That kind of plays along that line. Now my brain's really ticking. Anyway, we're coming up on about an hour, guys. I want to keep these sessions short, or an hour. And again, if I get on a roll, maybe extend it a little longer. But we'll start each session talking about the current game jam. Next week, hopefully, I'll get a chance to highlight. Oh my God. I forgot his name. He's going to kill me. Anyway, battle ready. Oh, brain fart. But I'll get his game and do a little deeper dive on it, which might spur me off on another tangent. And then we'll do a little more design on Drachen. I'll get some work done on it. I'm going to be using this podcast to help me finish this design. And like I said, work on other designs. So the plan is next Friday night, potentially Saturday, depending. If you guys got some ideas, again, we'll see where the game's going. I'll get it to a point where it's play testable, and I'll put it up on the game jam. I'd love for you guys to pull it down at that point and play it and give me some of your feedback. And then if it turns out it's a nice little game, if I really like the design, I'll reach out to an artist and see if I can get some really cool art done for it. Because for me, art really gets my mind going and provokes the head canon. That's for you, not Jay. It promotes the head canon. Eric, thank you. Oh, he's going to kill me. Hopefully he doesn't watch this episode. So yeah, Eric got this game in first. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching tonight. I'm going to go ahead and call it a show here. Like I said, we're at about an hour. I appreciate it. Thanks for popping in. I know it was last minute, and I will see you guys next week. We'll do this all again and make a little more progress on Drachen. Thanks, guys. Good night.